Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Natalie Shaver, and I'm the Content Marketing Manager here at Pharos. I'm joined today by Pharos Executive Chairman Kevin Pickhardt. Today, we're going to talk about a major shift happening in enterprise printing. Microsoft's move to Windows Protected Print, or WPP, is one of the most significant changes we have seen to printing in decades. And it is going to have real implications for how organizations manage print going forward. The challenge is that many organizations are not yet fully prepared for what this change brings. Before we begin, two quick housekeeping items. First, we are recording this session. You will receive an email with the recording link and the slides after we wrap, so you can re-watch at your convenience or share with a colleague. Second, if you have a question at any point during the session, please submit it and we will send a follow-up email to you with a response. In today's session, we will cover why Microsoft is making this change and the security risks driving it, what will happen to your current print environment as WPP is adopted, the timeline you need to know and why action is required now, the key challenges from legacy devices to complex print workflows, and practical steps to prepare your organization and avoid disruption. Before we get into the discussion, I want to introduce our speaker, Kevin Pickhardt. Kevin is the executive chairman of Pharos, where he previously served as CEO for more than 24 years. He has taken a hands-on approach throughout his career and has deep relationships with many of our customers, helping them navigate technology shifts and change. Kevin, thanks for joining us today. I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks, Natalie. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. As Natalie mentioned, there's a lot of change on the horizon, and that's really what we're here to talk about. Windows Protected Print being one of the biggest changes that we have seen in the print space in years. And yet you don't read a lot about it or see a lot about it. So this is really what this is today is about, is to talk to you about, number one, what it is. Number two, why. Why are we making this change? Number three, we'll talk about the impact of this in organizations, and then we'll finish with a little bit with how you can think about it and what you can do about it, what you should be thinking about and doing about it as we go forward. So why don't we start off with what it is? Windows Protected Print, or WPP, is a modernized architecture for print that has been introduced by Microsoft. I say introduced, it currently sits as an optional configuration on the Microsoft operating system. So operating systems are shipping with WPP included, but basically not turned on. As we'll see later in this discussion, as we go forward in time, WPP, or Protected Print, will begin to ship as the preferred model and then as the turned on model for the operating system. So it's important that we understand that it's coming and what it is. So modernizing print and the architecture. Really what we're talking about is sort of five key things here. One is that it removes third-party drivers from the operating system and the endpoint. Now, that's a big change. Most printing today is using these third-party drivers, so removing them is an obvious impact to all desktops. It implements and standardizes on a driverless model called IPP, or Internet Printing Protocol, which has been around for quite some time, but is a less used printing protocol, at least in the Windows operating system. Now, we call it driverless, which is a little bit of a misnomer, because there still is a driver, but the architecture of that driver and who owns that driver has fundamentally changed. So it is not a driver as we have come to know them and love and hate them inside our enterprises today. The third element that this does is it replaces the legacy spoolers and print queues. How the print gets delivered to the endpoints is changing. It's aligning all of the print architecture with modern security or zero trust principles It's important to understand that WPP in and of itself is not a zero trust protocol or a zero trust architecture, but it enables zero trust architecture. So while they're not one and the same thing, as we go through the presentation, hopefully you'll see why and how Windows Protected Print aligns with and enables zero trust. All of this is eliminating a high privilege attack surface, which is the Microsoft print subsystem. So why is Microsoft doing this? And it really goes after this last bullet. First and foremost, Microsoft has established that they are going to prioritize security above all else. They made that decision several years ago, anticipating what was happening in our world, looking ahead to their operating system and what enterprises needed. And when they did that, they could not do that and maintain printing as it was. Printing has been a key vulnerability area for Microsoft really since the get-go. So number one, it's about reducing the security risk. Second thing that they're looking to do is standardize the printing model. When you think about how printing works today, desktops are filled with print drivers written by third parties, written by the printer manufacturers. These print drivers are written to specifically guide in how documents get converted into a language that specific printers running specific firmware and specific architecture understand, which is why we have so many drivers. They have been designed very coupled with the hardware, the printer hardware, that is. So standardizing the printing model is a big step for Microsoft to say they're going to break down that model that we have today of every printer comes with a different print driver, and even Windows ships with a plethora of print drivers, so that when you install a printer, a new driver comes in to that particular make, model, and or family. All of this is aligning with modern security. Now, Microsoft is not alone in this. In many ways, Microsoft is behind the pack. Apple, with their AirPrint model and their desktop printing system, has already headed down this path. They've already embraced an IPP print model, as has Android, as has iOS. So this shift is not really new to the technology world and to enterprises. Most of you are dealing with it already on other platforms, but this is a big shift for the Microsoft platform. So let's talk about why. What is this security that Microsoft is trying to change or to fix? What is the problem with traditional printing? And it really fundamentally ties back to printing and its architectures, and how printing works has not changed fundamentally in the last 20 years. We are still operating printing and print architectures like we were really even going back to the 90s and the early 2000s. The whole model of the print drivers and print spools and spoolers and print servers, that architecture has not shifted while the world around it has shifted pretty dramatically, as we all know. So print drivers, because they've had to run across multiple different systems, run with elevated privileges inside of the operating system. If you look at going back to 2021, we all in the print world remember Print Nightmare. Print Nightmare was specifically going after this elevated privilege that printing runs at, or the print drivers and print spoolers run at. People were going in recognizing that the print subsystem runs with elevated privileges. So if I can get inside the print subsystem, I can then expand. But Print Nightmare has not, and the fixes that Microsoft put in place has not stopped this threat, and has not stopped the vulnerabilities, as you can see from the NIST vulnerability tracker that I've got over here on the right. It's not just the Microsoft print subsystem that creates the problem. We've got print drivers written by third parties. They're vendor specific. They're unique to each printer family or to each printer. And what that means is that organizations have many of them spread across the organization, and it's something that Microsoft or the operating system cannot control. Another key element of this is PDLs, page description languages. We think about them as PostScript or PDF or PCL. These are not just page markup languages. These are executable instruction sets. They're not just data. These are basically programming languages designed for printers to operate. And what that means is that they can be vulnerable to code insertion. They can be vulnerable to being able to take over a printer and or go backwards and take over a desktop should they be attacked successfully. So this driver, spooler, interpreter has created this persistent attack surface for hackers, and it has made it an area that is ripe for and is currently a high target for those trying to break into corporate systems and architectures. So this is about as deep as we're going to get on architecture here. But what we've seen with security over time, what's been happening with the security model, over time, software and applications are getting pushed further and further away from the kernel or the core of the operating system. So if you look at the kernel, what's happening, this is what controls the absolute, the deepest levels, access to the hardware and to storage sites, access to communication between components, the operating system that sits around that, administrative privileges outside of that, user level privileges beyond that. And then when you go to modern apps, they operate in a sandbox. They operate basically blocked off from all other things. So as we've looked at security, the security model, the aim is to push applications and to push software further and further away from the kernel and into user level and the sandbox level. Print and print spoolers, print drivers do not do that. The print spoolers and the print drivers generally run with system privilege and administrator privilege. And what that means is that if a hacker gets in there, they've got a higher level of authority and control over the operating system. So Microsoft has identified this and said, we're going to change this with Windows Protected Print. We're going to push the print subsystem out to user level and then even sandbox level for how we look at third parties and how third parties operate their drivers. So why does this matter? What is the security risk that we've got here? And it's pretty straightforward, and we've touched on it on the first few slides here. First of all, high privilege drivers create a path for hackers to deal with or access system level controls and system level authority. That is issue number one. Issue number two is Microsoft has had many different print vendors creating software that operate at these high access levels. Third element that we haven't touched on yet is visibility. Because there's so many different people generating and creating print drivers and third parties generating print drivers, and they're running on so many different operating systems, and there is a big lack of visibility into printing environments. So not only do you have high access and a broad attack surface with multiple vendors, your visibility into how secure your environment is, who's using which drivers, how the system is operating, that visibility in the systems to support it really don't exist. And this last element is also critically important. Printing is designed to be a trusted system. It is designed for an endpoint to talk directly to a printer. Even if we're going through in a print server world, you've got a printer that has lateral trust or bidirectional trust with a print server, and the print server has bidirectional trust with the desktop. And they do this because when I want to print, the printer needs to be able to communicate to me what what kind of settings it has, whether it's available, whether it has 2 trays or 3 trays. So this whole model has been built upon the idea that printers will talk directly back to endpoints through the printing process. Endpoints can submit print files directly to a printer. The printer doesn't care who I am when I submit that print submission request to it. If it receives a request that is in a formatted page description language or programming language, it will execute that. This is the trusted system that is being replaced by zero trust, endpoints not trusting each other. So by Windows changing the print architecture, they're also enabling us to break down and change printing to remove this requirement for trusted communication between endpoints. So this high trust execution, lack of visibility, as well as bidirectional or lateral communication has created real world problems that Microsoft and others are dealing with. Windows Protected Print is about re-architecting this and modernizing that. Okay, so let's talk about how Microsoft is changing the printing system and what WPP does that changes this security risk or protocol. First of all, we've talked about the issue of printers running with elevated privileges. Microsoft Windows Protected Print has IPP built into it inside of the operating system. That replaces the core element of a print driver with what we would call a driverless printing system. The spooler and how jobs get collected and submitted also changes. The print jobs are delivered via IPP in a secure way from an endpoint to a printer. Those endpoints can be authenticated in a zero trust world, and we recommend that they certainly do get constrained and that do get implemented in an authenticated zero trust world. But Windows Protected Print does not require that. Third-party drivers, as we know them, as I mentioned before, they go away in this model. They get turned into a print support agent. That print support agent runs on top of the Microsoft IPP, and that is how third parties, the OEMs, enable IPP to communicate uniquely with the unique needs or configurations of their makes and models. And fundamentally, we move away from this trust-based access that print files, no matter where they come from, if they hit the printer, will just get processed. We move away from that to an operating system controlling the print process fundamentally. And that is a re-architected, more modern architecture and a much more secure architecture. So what's the business impact of this? As we've been talking to date, this all sounds great. Where do I sign up? How do I get started? Fundamentally, the theory and the goals of what Windows is doing here are absolutely correct, and Pharos supports this. We've been architecting our solutions using IPP, using this modern security protocol for years. So Microsoft is absolutely heading down the right path. However, implementation takes care and consideration. You don't want to just push the button to turn on Windows Protected Print. It's important to understand this is a one-way path. This is not a let me turn on Windows Protected Print, try it, and if I don't like it, I'll turn it back off. Why is that? When you turn on Windows Protected Print, print drivers will disappear from the desktop. They are eliminated. So if a third-party driver, old style print driver operates on that endpoint, it will be deleted. Queues are going to go away. So printing and printers basically disappear from the user desktops. What does that mean? If you haven't prepared for it, printing is going to stop as you know it. All users will end up with no printers mapped, and your infrastructure will have to be basically rebuilt in this IPP or this IPP world, this WPP world. So just turning this on has the potential to stop print from working across your enterprise. We're in this world where it is exactly the right thing to do to start moving down this path for Microsoft to re-architect how printing works in their operating system, but it is something that enterprises need to plan for. So what are the key challenges inside of organizations as we implement this? First, for people who are in this printing space, you understand this out of the gate. Those of you who are not part of historical print, printing is oftentimes thought of like it's an app, right? I hit the file print, an app pops up, I make a couple of selections, and print happens at the other end. But printing is not an app. It's an enterprise or a system process. So when we change and we look at re-architecting or modernizing our infrastructure, it's important that we recognize that this isn't as simple as let me change from a print driver app to a Windows protected print app. Most organizations don't know what their internal architecture looks like. Many don't know how many printers they have, where they exist, how they're being used. These systems, these print systems I mentioned, have been architected over the last 20 years with little change. They have become complex. Even if they started as simple, they've become complex as users pick up new drivers, as they get home use devices in a hybrid work environment. As we look at system-based print, tying into print servers to deliver print, whether it's from an EMR system or from an SAP. So there's thousands of drivers with unique configurations that are all being driven to these printers. There's legacy constraints. Many people keep printers for a long period of time. So while modern printers are designed ready to support IPP out of the box, you may find that some legacy printers are just not ready for this revised architecture. They may not support these standards. And IPP as a universal standard has existed for many years. Because it has not been the core way that enterprises print, not all manufacturers and not all printers have been designed to be able to take advantage of advanced printer features using IPP. So print manufacturers are working today on how are they going to shift their architecture to be able to support Microsoft and IPP and the limitations of IPP. And we expect over time that IPP, the Internet Printing Protocol, the protocol itself will expand to cover some of these edge cases. Edge cases like which paper trays, how do you handle stapling, three-hole punch, multi-configuration jobs. So, some pages are coming out portrait, others are then going to come out landscape. So these complex print jobs you may find that IPP doesn't handle them all as easily or as simply. Things like advanced color management. All of these things that have been built into these print drivers over the years will have to be re-architected, and or how we operate will have to be re-architected. And then lastly, organizational challenge. This will impact everybody's desktops. So this impacts end users and help desks. So that means we need coordination as we look at shifting and rolling this out. And that coordination needs to be across the IT organization, end user services, help desk, security, and operations. So it's not impossible by any stretch. Making this change, we do it all the time. Look at modernizing a core infrastructure or a system that impacts many users. But that's really how we need to think about this versus I'm just going to use a different driver. If we're thinking about it that way, it's going to create problems. So what's the timeline and urgency? First of all, this is not brand new. Windows Protected Print was introduced in 2024. Last year in 2025, Microsoft stopped introducing or enabling any new third-party drivers in their operating system. As we enter into 2026, and some of you may have already noticed this, the operating system begins to prioritize IPP and IPP printing. If you just go in and say you want to add a printer, Microsoft will generally suggest an IPP printer versus the manufacturer's third-party print driver. And as we look forward to 2027, we're going to look at only legacy or security changes being made into legacy drivers and into drivers. WPP is forecasted to be the default configuration coming in 2027. So the time for planning is now. We see signs of this already for organizations that are looking at, well, I'll just put this off and I'll deal with it in 2027, or I'll work with Microsoft and extend into 2028. We're seeing some of the breakages at the edges now. For anybody who has started looking at bringing in ARM devices, ARM computing devices, when Microsoft worked with Qualcomm on building out the Microsoft ARM operating system, they built it on an IPP modern architecture. And as such, third-party drivers, modern third-party drivers for print don't work. So ARM devices, if you're introducing them, many people are finding they are introducing ARM devices and running into printing problems in their infrastructure. So that's an example of as this infrastructure modernizes, we'll begin to see breakage at the edges. So it's important that we look at planning for this change now versus wait until print breaks inside of our organizations and have to scramble. So how do we prepare? What are the most important steps that we can take today when we think about Windows Protected Print and going forward? And the first and probably the most important is making print visible inside your organization. I mentioned earlier that print is complex inside of organizations, both at the desktop level and with legacy workflows that are driven to printers. So understanding what printers I have, the age of those printers, how they're being used, and then being able to map that against what dependencies I have. Are these IPP ready? And if so, how ready? Or do I need to start thinking about getting rid of older devices inside of my infrastructure or changing some devices out? All starts with understanding and making print visible inside your organization. IPP is not new. IPP has been around. So there is nothing stopping organizations from introducing IPP printing today. Start to learn early, understand how this is going to operate. Begin to take whatever workflows we can shift from this legacy model into a modern architecture using IPP. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing flip the switch. Start today introducing IPP so that you can understand where you're going to need to make changes, where you need to focus. The third element inside of this is adopting a print management strategy. Managed print services, which many enterprises have had for years, is about managing printers and ensuring that those printers are up, maintained, modern, optimized. Print management is about managing printing. So when we look at this shift, how we think about drivers and queues and who's printing to what device, adopt a print management strategy. It's not just a matter of, are my printers up and accessible on the network? It's about who's using them, how are they being used, what print flow is being used, and how can I track and monitor and manage that. This will involve a cross-functional effort, so it's not too early to start engaging end user support, InfoSec, infrastructure in this discussion of print is going to change in our organizations and how do we get there. This does impact end users, So we need a plan for change management that's all the way out to the desktops, and it's all the way out to the workflows that impact our end users. And that's really number 6. It's change management and understanding and testing the workflows in your organization. Banks that have unique applications that are printing at branches will need to understand how they are going to print, whether they're going through a server, whether they're going direct, whether they use IPP. These workflows that drive our businesses, not just desktop printing, all get impacted here. So it's time to start working through that. And then something we've been pushing on for years, print cannot be ignored as part of your InfoSec, as part of your zero trust security strategy. So getting that team engaged, letting them understand what Windows is doing with WPP, and preparing them for this shift are all key steps. So 7 key steps that you can get started on right now before flipping a switch that says, I'm turning on Windows Protected Print, all to help you prepare. There are other benefits that come with Windows Protected Print and other benefits that come with acting early. Number 1, this is fundamentally about improved security and security posture. The printing subsystem and the printing process is vulnerable. We know that today. It is incompatible, fundamentally incompatible with zero trust security, which many of you are implementing. So the benefit of getting started now is also the opportunity to improve the security posture inside your organization and begin to close what is a threat position for many of you. Secondly, one of the biggest challenges and headaches for organizations dealing with printing is the complexity that comes with the lack of standardization inside of the printing environment. The management of all of these queues, of all of these printers, of all of the print drivers creates headaches. It creates headaches for end users, for IT organizations, for testing, for help desk. When you look at heading to IPP, it is a standardization play as well. So complexity will be reduced dramatically when you start moving down this path towards a Windows protected print architecture. Third, organizations that are building cloud architecture. IPP or IPPE or IPP everywhere is fundamentally built as a modern communications protocol that is cloud ready. So as you look at moving your print infrastructure into the cloud, WPP, IPP, what Microsoft is doing here, and these more standardized print models are fundamentally built to operate better in the cloud than the plethora of drivers and how we manage multi-vendor worlds with multi-vendor or many different drivers. And then lastly, as an adjunct to that, this is an opportunity to, when you re-architect how print works, to eliminate our dependency on on-prem print servers. The need for print servers fundamentally goes away when we look at a modernized architecture. So there's key benefits beyond just adhering to Microsoft standards when we look at modernizing architecture with WPP. So in summary, and what's next? Windows protected print is inevitable. We all know when Microsoft makes a shift, a fundamental architectural shift in their operating system, that ship has sailed. It's just a matter of time before Windows protected print is inside of organizations, and it's fundamentally the way that the operating system operates. The impact of that is significant. We can't ignore it. It's not just a software or operating system upgrade, because when you do this upgrade, your print architecture will fail. It will be eliminated, the current one. And it doesn't get automatically rebuilt just by pressing the button. This takes planning. And that really is this third element of preparation really starts now. If you haven't gotten it through the conversations yet, this is more than a technical fix. Pharos has been working with Microsoft, working with Qualcomm. We have been embracing IPP as a protocol in our architectures now for 8 to 10 years. So we are well positioned and we're here to help. We're here to be your partner in this transition, to help you bring visibility to your current environment, to help you build and guide a path forward, to manage complexity, and to help architect this modern print infrastructure to help you standardize and bridge this gap between our legacy world of today and the modern world that Microsoft envisions tomorrow. So with that, Natalie, I will turn this back over to you. Thank you all for spending time with us here at Pharos today. We very much look forward to hearing from you, hearing your questions, and working with you in the months to come.
Thanks, Kevin. That was incredibly helpful. You highlighted not only why Microsoft is making this change, but also the challenges organizations will face and what it really takes to prepare for what's ahead. Thanks again for sharing your perspective on WPP. It is much appreciated. For everyone in the audience, thank you for spending this time with us. We hope you found the session informative. When the webinar concludes, please consider filling out our survey. Your feedback will help us with future events. And as a quick reminder, you will receive an email shortly with a link to the recording and a copy of the slides. The deck includes links to a few resources you might find helpful, including our blog post with Kevin and our latest WPP readiness materials. If you would like to dig deeper into what this means for your environment, please reach out to your Pharos account representative or visit pharos.com to start a conversation. And with that, thanks again for your time. We hope you have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to talking with you again soon.